interested in. I know you spoke to John Robb a while ago about kind of how the best thing about New Model Army was the sort of freedom that you've afforded yourself as a band, and I quite like that, and I kind of wanted to sort of delve deeper into your attitude to success and how that's changed from the beginnings of the band and that sort of time. You mentioned you'd kind of gone from the possibilities of becoming an arena band to gaining this wonderful cult following that supports you and continues to support you through these like sold out tours. Sold out tour you're about to do. How has your definition of success changed over time, Justin? Do
It
you
does.
think about it?
I don't think it has, in the sense that when you're young, you talk about. We used to talk about making it.
Yeah.
As a band, you're starting a band when we make it, and there is a kind of definition to that, and the definition is making a living from it. This is what you dream about when you start.
Yeah.
That you could make a living from music. You wouldn't have to have a shit day job you hate. That is the dream, and that's kind of what you dream of, and that's the definition of success. So we crossed that bridge in sort of 1984, that we could make a living from it, or 85, something like that. And from that point on, you have rises and falls, and you may be here in the charts this year and there in the charts another year, and that doesn't make any difference. What makes a difference is that you still make a living from it. That's my definition of success as a musician.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, just in just having that ability to and the freedom to survive through your creative sort of process, which is good. And then the next one is a bit of a follow up to that, and I'm very interested in getting your. It's a bit of word association. Obviously, we talked about success just then, but the idea, the legacy of New Model Army. Do you consider, as this band, has been going for so long and has created that success for themselves, well, for yourselves? Do you consider the legacy of the band that what you'll leave behind as a musician, as an artist, or does that not really resonate with you?
I never thought about it.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
That doesn't register at all. Surely your legacy is after you stopped or after you're dead, and is decided by people like you,
Yeah.
or other musicians, or people that like the band for whatever reason. It's not. We don't think about it. I mean, again, it's like we've never really been trying to please anyone else. We're trying to please ourselves. You're trying to. Somebody said, what's the great difference between now and when you started? And I thought, well, 43 years ago, you get in a room with some other people and you make a noise. You invent a noise that you love and that you're proud of. And it's yours and you've made it, and it's 43 years later, it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
But I mean, the thing is, we never got stuck. And I think that I read the Bono's autobiography recently, and I don't usually read autobiographies, but someone said I should read it, and I did. And one of the things that struck me is how by the end of the 80s, U2 had kind of nailed the stadium quasi-religious gathering thing perfectly. Yeah. And then they felt the need. They had to sort of renew themselves. They had to find somewhere else to go. And Bono was particularly sort of adamant in this idea that we need to reinvent ourselves. And so they tried over the years, with varying degrees of success artistically, to reinvent themselves. We've never really had to do that. And I think one of the reasons is because there's been this slow turnover of members.
Yeah.
So when one new person arrives, they arrive with a whole set of new musical ideas and a whole new personality. And one new person changes all the dynamics in a group. So it's like every 5 or 10 years, we automatically get sort of renewed in a way. And that's actually, I think, been quite helpful to us.
Yeah. Again, that sort of a natural reinvention without you really having to think about it, effectively.
That's right. And then the other one was, if any song threatened to become bigger than the band.
Oh yeah.
You know, there was Vengeance or 51st State or Vagabonds or something. You know, our sort of response was to stop playing it. It's like, we're not going to get put in a box where there's the song we think we have to play.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I remember you saying, I think in another interview, you'd said that you kind of didn't want it. You didn't want that level, the stadium level
Well,
of.
the thing where you have to try to please people.
Yeah,
No, didn't really want that.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I also like I like the sort of family thing of touring, when you're touring together with you, traveling together with a small crew. You know, we're 12 people on the road, or 13 or 11, you know, the band and crew. Move together, travel together. A good number of people. I remember when it was slightly bigger at one point, you know, 2 buses, 3 buses, and the band were traveling separate from the crew, and it was all a bit kind of, I don't know, you felt like you were a cog in a machine. And I think that we've always tried hard not to be that. It's partly why we sort of stay outside of the mainstream and don't do much social media, and we live in Bradford, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're kind of okay being outside of everything. It suits our natures.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously I know you weren't born there, but obviously the band formed in Bradford, and that sort of. Do you feel like the work ethic of the sort of, you know, there's a big question I like to ask, because we formed in the north in terms of our remit is supporting northern creatives and northern artists and creative, and there's been this sort of north south divide on what bands can access in terms of opportunities. Record labels comes into it quite a lot, where people say, oh, I need to leave Leeds or Bradford to find success, and you found success, you know, when you built this band. And I wonder, is that work ethic, that kind of northern work ethic, is that central to your? I know you don't live there now, but you know what I mean.
I don't know. I think that all of us. I don't know if it's to do with being in the north, or you know, obviously, like, you know, I'm originally a southerner.
Yeah, of course.
But that's the reason we have a work ethic. We always had a work ethic, but it's partly, you know, if you're doing something you really love, then work ethic's not really too difficult. You know what I mean? And you know, we've never had the sort of. I personally, certainly, and no one else in the band really has ever had that kind of excess is the route to wisdom thing.
Right.
You know, with the drugs, the alcohol. Yeah, there's drugs and alcohol around, of course, everywhere. But none of us have ever sort of gone, that's more important to me than creating. No, none of us have ever fallen to that, and I think we're lucky in that sense as well.
Yeah, yeah. Do you feel like that? Do you feel like that's changed over the decades? Again, that sort of London centric and I guess bigger city centric. Do you feel like there's opportunities for bands now to break out of smaller cities, or cities that aren't necessarily seen as the big cultural hub for music?
I think there are, but the problem for all bands coming up now, which we didn't have, is the fact that it's very hard to make any money from music.
Oh yeah.
You know, that's just when we first starting, you know, you release your first singles to not many people. You know, you sold 1,500 copies of your first single, and that's nothing. You know, now you might get your first single, you might get 1,500 listens on Spotify. Well, that's worth about threepence.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's not. It's very difficult for a band to make a living. Brexit's made it much worse. And my heart goes out to the young bands starting now. I think in many ways it's harder now. Yeah, it's easy to put your music on Spotify, etc., etc., etc. But you're only one of 40,000 people that are putting music up there that day.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's certainly a difficult time for new bands, but it's great to see. I think for a lot of bands from these areas, it's great to see your success and your longevity, and that is one of the things I wanted to ask. I've got about 3 or 4 more questions for you, Justin, and one of the things I wanted to ask, because I know you can't speak for previous members of the bands, members of the band that are in there now, of course, but what are the big lessons you've learned from the 80s, from those first records, from that level of success? Obviously, you've achieved millions of streams from like No Rest for the Wicked, Thunder and Consolation. All these records have brought you levels of success. But what from the very beginning of your career as a musician to now, how would you say you've changed and developed as a person and as a musician? If they're one and the same things, they could be totally different.
I haven't become a better musician even after 40 years. I'm still, but I suppose, have I become a better writer? That's not for me to say. But as a person, I think I've changed in the ways that all people change, which is that when you're young, you want success, not necessarily sort of worldly success, but you want you want people to love you or think you're cool or etc., etc., etc. And you're very frightened of failure. And then what happens is that we all go through our lives, and it really doesn't matter what you do with your life. Some things go wrong and some things go right. Whether you're talking about relationships or jobs or things you love or whatever. Some things do go right for everybody, and they don't make everything okay forever. And things go wrong for everybody, and they're not the end of the world. And that's what you learn after 30, 40 years, not to worry so much about success and failure. Yeah, some things work out, some things don't.
Yeah.
And you just roll with it.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I guess because of what you've achieved, you've kind of not like you've got armor to when things go wrong, or not like it's like a shield to when things go wrong, but you just got more experience, a wisdom, effectively.
But I don't think that's particularly characteristic of being a band. I think that's just all human beings as they get older.
Yeah.
You get a few things have gone wrong in your life for everybody, and you got through it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, he's still here, which is great. I think a nice little message. But keep rolling with the punches effectively. Maybe I've just oversimplified what you're saying. But
yeah, basically, yeah,
exactly that. Yeah. I think that's, because I want to talk about, obviously, Unbroken. I want to ask you a question. There was one of the things you said in that, more recent interview with John Robb where you're about creating an atmosphere and it's all about feeling. And it's been about feeling for a long time for New Model Army and the music you create. And I wonder,
what else is music for?
yeah. I don't know, man. I think a lot of people get sort of, people get swept up in the likes and the streams, like these days. Maybe that's a problem these days musicians have that you didn't have back in the day. I think people get swept up in how many streams something gets. I saw something the other day where there was a question asked, if nobody heard the music, would you do it anyway? And you get the overwhelming response of yeah from a lot of people, but then some people no, because what's the point? You know what I mean? If nobody hears it, what's the point? And yeah, it's an interesting one. Anyway,
I'm absolutely in the camp.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
Making music is the most. It's the thing I love most.
Yeah.
Making music with other people. I'm rubbish on my own. I have to have other people around me. But making music with other people is, if nobody hears it. I mean, there's lots of things we've recorded that no one will ever hear.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, isn't it? But there's like I say, when I listen to Unbroken, if I'm Still Me, you've got Do You Really Want to Go There, and these tracks that create an atmosphere, create a vibe, and obviously the record as a whole. If I was to ask you, maybe it's a easy question, maybe it's difficult. If I was to ask you, in terms of the atmosphere and the feeling and the vibe that you wanted to create in that moment in time, everything that you wanted to achieve in terms of the feeling and the atmosphere that you wanted to build, is that, what Unbroken is to you? Because obviously it's out there in the world now, and
I can see things that we could have done differently on it,
right?
But I think that's pretty normal. But we didn't, as we were making it. It was interesting that as we were making it, we never really had an idea of what we were making.
Right.
It was partly because it was done over quite a long period of time, and it was interrupted by bits of touring that were left over from COVID, and the orchestral project that was left over from COVID, and also we kept breaking off making the album to do other things and then going back to it. And every time I went back to it, I'm going, what does this add up to? What is it? And I never could find it. I never could
Right.
It's a sort of defiant sounding record to me. It's got a lot of energy and spirit and kind of fuck you.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of that, more than our last few records.
Yeah.
I don't particularly know why. I don't really care why. That's just the characteristic of this record.
Yeah.
I think the previous one from here had a lot of spirit in a slightly mystic way, and we went off to Norway to record it and stuff.
Yeah.
It was always meant to be that. This one we just banged together in our own studio, and we knew from the beginning that we wanted to make something simple, and I think it is quite simple. We didn't want to go through too many tangents or get too clever with anything. So we set out to make a record that's got energy and spirit and was relatively simple. And at the end of it, you go, yeah, fuck it. It's a bit like that sort of feeling that I got from it.
Yeah. I feel like that. Unbroken as a title and the vibe, the energy of it. It's like you're doing something because you want to do it. You're doing something because you believe in it. And I feel like, again, from listening to other interviews with you, that is the core of everything you're about, is doing something that you like. But it just so happens that you have built a nice following of people that also care about it, which is, it's the dream, isn't it?
I think it's a Neil Young quote. He said, if you if you follow your own star for long enough, eventually people learn to trust you.
Yeah, I like that. But yeah, if you stick around long enough, people believe in you, people trust you. Yeah, it's an interesting point. Thank you so much for the time, Justin. I've got a couple more roundup, pluggy, promo questions. The first bit is, obviously, you're about to go out and tour Europe. You're going to do some shows in the UK. Obviously, you've been touring for years everywhere. What is the message that you have in 2024 for New Model Army fans, people that have discovered you previously? Obviously, this record has charted very well, leaving you to probably new fans and new people. What is the message for those people that have supported New Model Army through your history, and obviously new fans that you're going to make through Unbroken?
I don't really have a message. The message is in the music, and how people receive the music is entirely individual. So I've never, if 40,000 people have bought tickets so far or something. I haven't got a message for them all. The message is in the music and however they want to receive it.
Fair enough. That is, it's clear and concise. I dig it. And the last question is basically checking I've done my job properly, Justin. Is there anything that you'd like to plug? Anything you feel like I've missed that you want to promote or share before we finish up today?
No, not really.
Fair enough. I appreciate it, Justin. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your evening.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. Bye.